Hello and welcome back to the channel where we are building a video game from scratch using Love2d and Lua. We're done with the demo. The demo actually is approved by Steam. So we have the green light to release the demo on Steam, which is great, but we are working on fixing the inventory system, which I can already see a mistake. It says we've got one loot when it should be nil there because there's no quantity for loot. But we're testing out this serialization for our inventory class objects, which is normally not possible with Bitzer. I mean, it's made possible through Bitzer in a very specific way. So let's take a look at what we have here, because we added this function on the item class itself called serialize. And then we added a class called deserialize. And basically, when we go to deserialize it, we create an item, we give it the data that we pass in to the deserialize function. So we give it the data so we can make it. And then, this is redundant, we'll be able to say, just assign this quantity and equipped status. Now there's a couple other fields in the item class that we might want to take a look at. Then in the save data, we're cycling through every grid in our inventory. And if there is a valid item, right, because it's an empty table unless there's an item in there, then it's valid. So that's where the if item comes from. If item, then we're gonna say, well, serialize the data, and then we're gonna put, this was the hard part that took us a while to figure out, is that we have to put the save data into a two-dimensional array, technically a three-dimensional array. So we're putting that data that we just serialized into the save data table, and then this is a comment out, so we can get rid of that. So what ends up happening here is that our save data is a 2D array. So we have a save data inventory grid for every single grid in our inventory. And let's add some printing, I think, for this, because we have where we deserialize by the item. Okay, let's take a look, because in our, I want to say it's save data. Save player data. Let's see. Where is it, man? Okay, yeah, okay. So this was the old stuff. We don't need that. That was how we were testing the serialization. This was the old G item inventory grid. And we're doing something similar, right, with the three-dimensional array here, where we're assigning. It's just we deferred this type and quantity assignment via the serialize function, but then we do like a reconstitution with the deserialization by initting a new item and passing in these given objects so that we can have the proper table for an inventory, for an item class. But yeah, this, we could say, yeah, I want to do this explicitly, where we do say, okay, well, if there is a thing in that 2D array, then save it, because we don't need to save non-installed items, you know? Well, actually, yeah, we probably will. We need to pass in an index or an ID. We need to create IDs, I think, because let's say the player has a loot and it's in the grid 1, 2, which is the second slot in our inventory. When they save it, it doesn't need to just be saved. It needs to be saved and put back where it came from. So we need the ID, because if we don't do this, if we don't control this, then things can get overwritten and things can get messed up. So we do want to pass in a ID for an item as well. That I think makes sense. So let's walk through the save first when we do the inventory grid. Okay, so when we serialize it, we're saying, okay, if there is an item in there, let's go ahead and snag that item. Let's go snag that item's fields. So we need to add it to this serialize function here. So we need to add, if this is our save data, we need to go into our item class, which we can go here. So here's our item class. Now in our serialize, we need to copy over a new value, and that is an ID. We need to give, we need to give proper ID values, right? We need to initialize these for every object. So I think we need to have this like so, where we can say, well, the self ID is saved from the param of the item instantiation. So therefore, if we just run the init, we get an ID. Well, we don't set a default value for this, but we need to pass it as a param up here. So let's see where we're actually doing, when we give ourselves an item, we do this thing right here where we say we're manually overwriting these right here. So let's say that this is item 1 or ID 1 and ID 2, and I'm just, to make it, I'm actually going to put 20 and 21 just because we could misinterpret a 1 and 2. We're going to change this right away if it works. I just want to go to the serialize. And it's not when we define serialize, it's when we run serialize that we want to say we can print up this concatenate with at ID and then ID the item ID. Yeah, because this item is the item that we've selected here, and that item should have an ID because we just assigned it in the init. Yeah. So we're looking for it to print on screen, which happens on a save. Oh, it was nil on this value. Let me try. Concatenate fill ID is a nil value on save data. So it's item ID, yeah, because the item has a dot type and the item has an ID if we make it. So let me just see, do we init an item here without giving it an ID? And maybe, well, yeah, we kind of have to do this. Where do we init an item? See, we don't pass. Oh, God. You know what we can do? This is going to be better because we don't want to add it as a param. I mean, we definitely could. It's just that every item ever needs that ID because we don't assign a default. Self.id gets ID or default value. We don't have that, or we don't want that. So I'm not going to do that, but I think what I want to do is when we go to save it, right, we're cycling through every key item in the inventory or every normal item in the inventory. We run this, which serializes it. We need to add the fact that we can multiply the I by the J to get an ID. Does that make sense? Like if it's a nested for loop, then I times J, well, no, that's messed up. We can create an index though, an item index. So what we can do is say, we're going to create an item index and it's going to start at 0 because every for loop, every nested loop here. Yeah, every nested loop, I believe, we need to increment item index by assigning it to item index plus 1. Just increment it. So the first loop, first row, first call. Oh yeah, I got it right. First row, and then first call in first row. That gets a 0 plus 1, which is 1. Next one gets 2, next one gets 3. Then when we go to the next nested for loop, we're on I equals 2. Then we're getting the 4 to 5 to 6, and the next row 7 to 8 to 9. So we should have an item index, but we need to pass this item index into the serialize. And then we can use it in the serialize. So we should be able to say, okay, well, item index, you've got the quantity, the type, and the ID gets, and we can pass in the ID here. Would it let me do that? I don't see why it wouldn't let me do that. But I don't know. Okay, so what we're doing is when we go to save it, we just increment this item index, and it's part of what we serialize the item with. So as long as our deserialize pulls out the item.id as well, right? We pull out the ID there. Hey, what's up, Mendoza? Welcome back. Yeah, okay, if we pass this in correctly, that gets assigned into the ID field. That all gets saved into this specific inventory grid. Then when we go to deserialize, we are just running it. We need to add in deserialize. Okay, we did add the assignment. Okay, so we're just going to pull into the items.id. We're going to pull the data ID that we pass as the param, and the param of data is this item data, and that is what we're serializing. So this should work. We can say this too, because ideally, I mean, I want to see that we're saving the IDs. with ID, and we can put the item dot ID as long as that came out. We do inspect an item, so it might actually be there, but let's see. Already crashed, man. ID is a nil field on 265. Right where we're at. Let me just say that. Okay, 70 failed to concatenate ID. Oh, we already tried to do this and it failed. Okay, so it says saved item health potion successfully twice, and that's because we have these, but it did not print. It says saved item, so it should be right by saved item. Is where we do it. Saved item. See, so we can't. Are we not? We're pulling serialized item index from item data, so yeah, we really can't just do item ID here. Yes, we can. Item ID. Well, it says saved item 1 and 2. Oh, item index, probably. We want what we save. We want what we save. Actually, yeah, we don't. When we save it, we save the ID. Right? Oh, dude, I don't know. Oh. Okay. Yeah, whenever we're ripping the ID, where is that? Well, we have the item index, we pass it into serialized. So if we screw that up, then that would explain why we don't have the item index. But the serialized, if we don't have anything on that, if we don't pass in ID, how does it get the proper ID? We could... This just returns a bunch of values. So it's almost like we can just, I don't know. We can't just assign it. Well, we can maybe assign it before we serialize it. Let me see. If we serialize and we just say, okay, well, we know we need to pull the ID from the serialize, and then before we serialize, we say that the item ID gets the item index here and just assign it that way before we serialize it. Then maybe when we print up the item ID, we can see the values that we gave it. Okay, it says 1 and 2, but when we go to actually instantiate this item, oh, you know what? Okay, no, well, that's right then, because our index was increasing. I forgot we turned off the param for the item for the ID as an integer here. So now that we're doing this, we can do this saved item at grid ID of item.id. We still look to be loading the game twice, but Okay, health potion. Yeah, saved item, health potion at grid of 1. Okay, we might as well do the whole shebang and say with quantity, and we could do the space both here and here at grid ID number. Okay, with quantity, and then we're gonna put item quantity. Okay, let's try this. I'm gonna hit save. It says saved health potion at grid ID 1 with quantity 2, saved health potion at grid ID 2, quantity 3. And if we look at our inventory, we have a quantity of 2 in grid 1 spot, 3 in the next. So I say, oh, this is good. This is good. I want to say that we should test with other items, make sure we save other items. And, you know, it has to be every item, every grid has to be saving correctly. Let's look at our item instantiation. And you know what? We should have committed our deserialization before we tried adding this. But I guess it wasn't fully working yet. So I guess this is okay. Let's do this. And we're gonna put one at 1-3, and it's a berry, and let's say we've got 20 berries, and then let's say the next one is also berry. We have like a magic bag also for this, but oh, we don't even have it, dude. So where'd it go? Grid 1, 2, and then grid 2. Well, no, that should be right. 1, 3. You know what? I think it's overriding it like right away. Cuz I would bet, well, let's see, cuz I would bet if we take this off, since we're actually loading the deserialized table, it might actually still be there. Yeah. So it looks like it worked. It looks like it worked, but that also means that when we try to add this, we're continuing the game, we're loading, and then we're loading the saved data that's in the item slot. So that is why this grid item inventory is actually getting overwritten. So we would need to put this in a play state cheater toggle or something. We call it cheater toggle, and we can say if a certain keyboard's down. Yeah, let's say we're gonna just insert into our global item inventory these different items if 9 is pressed. So we save, we overwrite the inits, and then if we hold 9, we've got our other items. And they're equipable. Oh my gosh, look at this. They're equipable. And they should be all switchable, but it looks like we lost one of our potions. But this is great. Okay, we have a 2 and 3, yeah. So 2 and 3, but then when we swap it, oh, we hit 9. Okay, so let's test it one at a time here. If we test it with a 20, see, it didn't copy it right out. It gave us an extra berry, overwrote our potions. So that's what we're working on next. But we're equipping the thing we select. We're just not properly swapping the thing. This is great though. This is good. And the fact that we're loading the binary data from the class serialization is really cool. I mean, I guess it's one of those things that I didn't even know. You know, I guess in my brain I thought that you'd be able to just save the game state, put it in a file, and then load the game state and just re-simulate it or whatever it is. But our game isn't working like that because of the intricacies of how everything's initialized and how it's able to be tested. So I'm still learning, right? This is all just feeling out what works and what doesn't for the development. I say we're in a good spot to commit at least our serialization, and then we can work on the swapping and maybe get the swapping working. Yeah, okay, so our commit diff here, we add the ID to a serialization. We check if the item, see, I guess this if item doesn't really make sense because the one on save makes sense to me. This is okay though. It's just saying as long as it's not nil. If the item's not nil, then go ahead, save it. Then when we actually go to serialize the data, we take that item data, we item serialize it, we insert it into the key at the index of whatever item it's at. We print that up to the screen just for testing. We can delete this other serialize. And then we deserialize our data. So we loop through our inventory grid. We might want to print up this loaded. I think that was helpful. Let's print up, yeah, let's add this string back in. Let's add that string back in. I think it's exclusively at the load player data. Okay. It's after we loop through the grid here. Oh, lordy. This one. Let's see what this looks like. Okay, loaded as, okay, yeah, I like that we load, we do that. So it did save a inventory grid. Okay. This is looking good. Let's continue looking through the diff. Okay, so we cycle through, we're printing the load out now, which is good. We take off these original inits because it just gets overwritten by the load, which I don't quite like because it's a little tougher, but if we put it in the cheater toggle, it's fine, which is what we did. Okay, and then we skip to step 3 to avoid, you know, just to get the game started faster. So this is the beginning. This is the first working item serialization for class objects that we've been able to do. And we're actually using it, we're both serializing it and deserializing it out to use it to reconstitute new items, because things like the item.image can't be serialized and shouldn't be serialized. You know, when we save the data, you don't need to save the item, the item image. You just need the data that changed, the mutable stuff. I'm gonna add a commit and call it serialization. added for classes. Deserialization also seems to be working. Okay. Get status. Get push. Get log. Cool. Okay. I might call it there for tonight. I might call it there. I'm just really tired. Well, at least we got a stream out. We got serialization working for class objects. So what's next is we need to properly swap the item from the item slot to the key or the G item slot, the global item slot. And then once we get that swapping working, we can do a little bit more testing with the equips and the saves and the loads. Thanks H Mendoza for being here. Appreciate you hanging again. It's good to see you. Yeah, sorry, a little shorter one. You know, we got in there, we got a commit done, which is nice. But yeah, my battery levels are pretty low for today. But I'll be back tomorrow, and we'll get hopefully the item switching working, and then we can get that, and then that'll be a bug that's been haunting us forever. So hopefully it doesn't go too bad in the implementation of the swapping. I don't think it will be. It's pretty straightforward. I just don't have the Steam for it right now, so I will raid out and we will call it a night. Thanks for hanging, everyone. The Steam page is coming along. It's looking great. We missed the deadline for the Steam Next Fest for this upcoming March, but the deadline is April 20 or something to apply for the summer Steam Next Fest, which is the current plan. So we're gonna work on that. And this demo that we're working on now will hopefully be finished in time. I mean, it definitely will be finished in time for that Steam Next Fest, because we're not adding any more features other than rehauling this one because of bugs, but we're not adding anything new. That being said, we're gonna raid out to Finn is fine. Oh, you know what? Oh no, he's ending too. You know, we'll raid him to raid. Peace out, y'all.